Welcome to the Art of Cinema. In this episode, we are discussing The Matrix, released in 1999, directed by the Wachowski siblings, starring Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, and Lawrence Fishburne. So this is a big film, and it's a film that everyone's talking about right now, but it's a film that you and I watched years ago down in a basement, and I think it had come out 2 years before, or a year and a half before we met, or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was one of the first films we really connected on.
Yes.
And we were both like, yes, this is good, this is special, this is amazing. We kind of fused our brains together
Totally.
At that time.
Where were you? Where were you when this film came out? Where'd you go see it?
I remember seeing it in the theater.
Did you?
And just going like, oh, I think it was the first time I saw a movie that the concept was so original to me that really made me realize that film storytelling is something that can bring a whole new concept like into your life. That was so powerful and realistic, like the idea that we're all in this giant computer system and we're in these little pods and the Matrix is this grid, machine thing sucking everybody's brains out. Basically, it's just like it was so well told. The script was so well written and everything that when you see the movie, it's just so crystal clear. The story's crystal clear. It's not muddy at all. It's a very clean hero's journey. And I just came out of the theater going, whoa, is it real? Like feeling the back of my head, do I have that plug in the back of my head?
I hear you. I saw it with my father in 1999. I think it was a theater in Indiana. And I remember watching the film. I mean, I remember every moment of the film, but what I really remember is walking out of the theater with my dad. And I remember looking at him and I went like, oh my God, that was amazing. He was like, I know. Like, I couldn't believe what I had just seen. The effects were riveting. We hadn't seen, what do they call that? Bullet time, which was just phenomenal.
The Gaeta, John Gaeta. Yeah.
The way the dynamic action. I hadn't seen action like that before. And everything was so crisp and just supremely written and supremely acted, and all of the action, everything had purpose. It was a part of storytelling, and it was like a drug. I couldn't get enough. And this film was working for me on so many different levels. So many levels. I mean, not just in terms of like who are we as people? Right. What is the system that we're a part of? Yeah. What is it talking to us about the lives that we're living now? How do we relate this to, like, it was like literally it was like
and one of the things I really love about it is there's a lot of kind of Japanese influence cinematography, and it's really actually from anime, the way the animes are shot and the way they're directed and the longer takes and the really clean lines and almost like a comic book. And I know the Wachowskis had a lot of inspiration from, I think it was Frank Marshall and a lot of comic book artists that helped them with the storyboards and from the storyboarding, from the comic book world. And it just is crystal clean. Like when you see the storyboard, like that shot with Trinity has the gun to the gut, the agent's head, it's exactly like that.
Or when her hands are up like this,
right?
And you see that shot of her, and then there's a space right here. It's sublime. It is so beautiful. It is such a beautiful, I mean, every moment of the film is this painting or is this comic book cell. I've never seen a film like it since. Even the sequels aren't like it, the first one.
And it's really, it almost has sort of like a dust or a dirtiness to it.
Yes.
But it's still very clean and beautifully executed. Kind of like almost like the first Star Wars, like there's a dirty universe and you can feel like the graffiti on the walls and the dirt in the streets and the trash when they're running through the alleyways and stuff like that. So that opening scene with Trinity running up and down the rooftops and the agents chasing her
and that one big
the big jump to the window and everything. And Joe Silver, the producer, he loves to start movies like that. He always has a big action scene in the middle, in the beginning, and then it starts after that. So it's a very effective way to start a movie because it just kind of makes you grip.
It throws you right in there. And also I think it's just to sort of make it known, Keanu Reeves was a star. This made him a god.
He-
I mean, this catapulted him into like
people didn't take him serious.
like
till
godlike status, not so much just as an actor, but more as an icon.
Yeah.
He is Neo. He is
Right.
Neo. When he is dead, on this plaque will be "Here lies Neo" and Keanu Reeves.
Right. Yeah, and the sequels too. When you see him, you're just like, wow, there he is. You know, it's a very exciting character for him. It's just he's a great physical actor. You know, I think they did an excellent job casting him because it's such a physical role. There's so much fighting and fight choreography and all the physical demands of all those chase scenes and the bullet time and they trained with Wu Ping, the guy who did all the wire work, for over a year on a daily basis. I mean, what films do that nowadays? They don't do that.
Yeah.
You know, they bring in stuntmen. They have, you know, Brad Pitt. Other actors talk like that all the time. Oh, I'm happy to bring in my stuntman. Let him come on in. But in this movie, that was them in those shots. That was, you know, over a year of training straight. So that, I think that brought it a whole another level up because of that.
And also, I think it's important to note that The Matrix really ushered in wire work. The Matrix was the first film to feature wire work only seen in Asian cinema.
Right.
In a way that it was flawless. I mean, there's the whole scene where he's learning kung fu, and there's Morpheus and they're learning, and he's like, "Come on, you're faster than this."
Yeah.
And we're there as well, like,
What's going on?
What's going on? And then just the cinematography where you see Lord Larry Fishburne jumping up and taking that pose.
Yeah, right.
And he's flying overhead, and it slows it down. I'd never seen anything like that before, not in my life. And it was just like my eyes and my body and my soul were drinking up each image. I was just like, it's almost like they jack you in for this movie.
Yeah, like when they jam that thing in the back of your head in the movie, that's how you feel when you
Absolutely.
in the audience.
And you're like even and we watched it a couple nights ago, and of course we fell asleep, but because it was late.
It was in the middle of the night.
But I was like, I watch it like I'd never seen it before.
Yeah.
I don't like, oh, it's The Matrix. I'm like, it's The Matrix.
Yeah. And how many times have we seen that movie? Probably 100 times. I've seen it so many times, and every single time I watch it, I'm like that. I don't get tired of it. And you know, there's just this really here comes Onyx.
There's a glitch in the Matrix.
There's a glitch in the Matrix. Yeah, Onyx, you want to come up? This is Onyx, my kitty. Can you see his black eyes or green eyes? That means there's a glitch in the Matrix.
Yes.
So it's okay. Go ahead.
So we talked about first impressions. So let's talk about the story.
Yeah.
I think it is a hero's journey, number one, but I think the general story is that Neo is the central character, and he's living a life, but he feels like something's not quite right.
Yeah.
And he is hearing whispers of this thing called the Matrix, and he's hearing whispers of someone named Morpheus. He doesn't know who these people are. Maybe they're hackers, but there's something happening where the truth is being whispered, and he's like, well, what is this?
Follow the right rabbit.
Yes. Yeah. What is the life that I'm living? So he's on this journey, and essentially we are too with him. And then he comes into this awakening, and it's very interesting because we talk about the truth a lot, but he had to be able to handle it. He wanted to know the truth, but he had to be ready for it.
It's a scary thing.
Because, and I've always said, a lot of times people they think they want to know the truth, but they don't. Because when you do know the truth, you are
can't escape it.
Well, you can't escape it, but you're also beholden to it. You have to either follow through with it, or you have to pretend that you hadn't seen it before.
Yeah.
That's what the truth demands from you. So Neo got to this place where he was like, yes, I want to know the truth. And it came at a cost, major cost to him, where he left this life that he thought he had, and he ended up on this ship.
Yeah.
In the
real world.
In the real world, which was really depressing.
Right.
And that's the life he chose to come to. And so sort of his journey to the truth is part of the show. I mean, there's so much else going on as well in terms of the agents and the attack on the human city and the Nebuchadnezzar and everything that's going on. I mean, there's a lot of story there, but the general story is waking up to what the truth might be. And I think it's a powerful thing.
Yeah. And I think that resonates a lot with people who, see the movie, they feel that they have things in their life they have to be waking up to as well. And, you know, being stuck in a big corporate job your whole life, there's many people that can relate to a message like that. And it's not easy to break away from the safety of your own life and the security of a job or things like that, because, you know, the unknown is terrifying. Because you don't know, he didn't know what he was going to wake up to. And when he's in that pod and he looks over the edge and he sees all those millions of bodies everywhere. And can you imagine waking up and seeing that? I mean, when you live in a false lifestyle or a place in your life where you're not supposed to be, when you wake up to the reality of the situation and you step out of that, you can actually, you feel like that. You feel like completely shocked. And it's just a very... kind of rude awakening almost.
Totally. And it's so shocking that Cypher, who ends up betraying them, he's like the Judas, wants to go back into it because he can't take the real world. It's not the life. He's tired of the food. He would rather have the lie than know the truth. The truth was more seductive to him and more pleasurable for him than the lie. In that scene where he's eating the steak, his body was telling him it was real. It was delicious. It was great, but it wasn't true. And the film is very interesting in terms of a moral of saying, well, the lie is seductive. The lie can tell you you're feeling good. It can tell you these things, but in the long term,
it's not good for you.
It isn't good for you, and it's going to destroy you. And it did.
And that was really brilliant writing. The script is so good.
Airtight. It's airtight.
And the thing too is, I read the script and I saw the movie, and it literally is exact. I mean, a lot of times when you're doing a film, there's some improvising that will happen with lines of dialogue or shots here and there. But the Wachowskis are known for that. Joe Silver talked a lot about that, how it's very rare that directors know exactly what they want. They exactly know when to tell the actors to turn their head, what breaths to take, and everything. And so that just shows you the power of a vision of a director. If they know exactly what they want, look at the results. It still stands up. That was 1999, and it's now 2020, and people are still talking about it.
Absolutely. It was a game changer. It changed the way films were made. It changed the way effects were done. I mean, everything, almost all the big action films now come from the Matrix in some ways, whether it's replicating bullet time or technology that they advanced or explored or discovered while making the Matrix is now forever in cinema, even though that was before digital filmmaking was really, because they used all the cameras, and the cameras they're all taking these still images. I mean, I remember the DVD, it was the first DVD I ever bought, and I remember watching the behind the scenes extra. Again, it was like,
boom.
Like I could watch the extras on the DVD over and over and over. It was pretty amazing.
And the guy who did all that, his name is John Gaeta, he wasn't a part of any major effects company. And I remember Joe Silver, the producer, was talking about that. They went to ILM, they went to a bunch of special effects companies, and they couldn't find what they were looking for. So the Wachowskis ended up, I don't even know where they found this guy. But he was basically kind of like this guy out of nowhere, and they brought him in, and he came up with that whole bullet time, and there's actually still cameras. Those are taking still photographs, and he can go forward in time, backward in time. They can adjust it. They used it several times in the movie. In the beginning, when Trinity jump kicks that guy, the police officer, and then Neo with the bullets, and then again with Morpheus when he's running and he jumps out the window, and the agents are shooting through the wall.
And oh my God,
it's like
beautiful.
They're doing things that had never been seen, and still today people don't do that, where the story's continuing forward but the camera's speeding up ahead of the story and then slow motioning, and it's like, it's not even hard to describe what there's so many different technical things happening at once and
everything is augmenting the story. It's oftentimes very difficult, I think, to focus that much on visuals. Oftentimes the story isn't very good.
Yeah.
So, and we know films like that, like a great film that I love, the visually is The Fall by Tarzan Singh, but the story isn't great.
Right.
Or The Cell, which is just beautiful to look at, but the story isn't great
Right.
because so much energy is being spent on the visuals. But the Wachowskis knew that the story, I mean, everything augmented the story, everything helped tell that story and propel it forward. Nothing about the effects was like, oh, that's great, but that's sort of ridiculous.
Yeah,
it was like, no, we needed to see this.
Yeah.
And it just enhanced the idea that you're in a computer simulation. Of course this is possible. Of course we're seeing this, because in this world, you can manipulate it and do whatever you want.
Like the agent dodging the bullets.
Totally.
You know, when you see that, it looks real, but it's relatable, but it's just odd enough to where you believe it. You know, it's like, whoa.
And it's also one of those things as a child where when you're playing as a kid, I'm dodging bullets.
Yeah, right.
And they made it happen.
Yeah.
They brought it to light. All those things that we thought about we could do, we could fly.
And the punching.
Totally.
You know, and he's up against the wall and everything.
Oh, yeah. It's
subway
really...
scene, the backflip out of the subway when the train hits him. And I really love that scene when he gets hit and he's all bloody and he wipes the blood off his mouth. And then he's like, and the blood is gone.
Yeah.
And so that moment, you know, he's starting to realize, hey, I have more control here than, you know, back in the regular world.
Absolutely.
So I got a chance to meet Bill Pope, the DP at Art Center. He came for a lecture one day, and my gosh, the cinematography. It's funny because in person, he's very relaxed and kind of almost like nonchalant attitude, like, oh, yeah, we shot this movie. And the cinematography was stunning. The lighting inside the dojo, all the rain.
It wasn't, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and there was the scene when Neo's inside the back of the car. Remember when they first pick him up? There's a rear projection. They did that the old school way with an actual screen, you know, back like they did in the 50s. And you can't even tell. It's like all kind of green in the background, and all those car shots were projections. So they did a really great job of utilizing old film techniques, current film techniques and technology, and new innovative things. And I think that's another reason why that pushed the movie up on a whole another level. And the editing too. I got to meet the editor, and he was very nice, and he did such an amazing job. It was funny because he was talking about how it was really easy to edit the film because they did such a good job of meticulously storyboarding and planning out the shots that he didn't have to, you know, work extremely hard to cut it together because it was so well planned. And similar with Don Davis, he did the music and the sound design were kind of a mix together. It was really hard to tell what was a sound effect and what was the score because there was so much data and sound effects and strings and horns, and there was electronic music in there. It was all this woven together so well. And I met some of the sound supervisors on the film too, and they were telling me how they would go to junkyards and they would get a crane and take a car, and they would get like 14 or 16 microphones and put them all in a circle, and they would drop cars and they would hit the ground and explode and shatter and make all these crazy sounds, and they would catch them with all these different mics. So even on the sound editing and sound design, they really did some smart, and they took risk. They did some innovative things, and it shows. And
I think another thing that we discussed when we were watching the film is the lighting, and how the lighting is not super intrusive. Right. It's obviously it's not underlit, but it's perfectly lit. It's not overly stylized lighting. Right. So it's like you see bold contrast. It's just when they're in the ship, or whether they're in the Matrix, or whether they're in the dojo. It's beautiful. It's like soft, but not soft. It's not harsh, but it's not washed out either. Right. It's just, it feels timeless.
Yeah, it does. It does. And it's very beautifully lit. And in a way, it's almost like there's not a style to the way that it's lit. And that's why it looks timeless. because they thought about, okay, what would it look inside the ship, cold, dingy ship? It wouldn't be really bright. There's no sun outside, so it's not going to be pitch black. And yeah, it's just really, really well done.
Yes, and there's in terms of like some iconography.
Yeah, iconography.
Let me say it again. In terms of iconic shots, one, of course, there's the chairs when they're both sitting there and he's got the pills and you see these glasses. It's amazing. But there's also the first time that he's brought back into a simulation after his body has been recovered and it's all white. And there's a lot of things that they establish that like, that's the Matrix. We'll never look at chairs that look similar to the chairs that Neo and Morpheus sat in and not think, oh, the Matrix.
Right.
Or will not see a black cat again and think, oh, there's a glitch in the Matrix.
Yeah.
I mean, we say that all the time. Oh, deja vu. There's a glitch in the Matrix. Like deja vu is even, because they say, you know, deja vu is the Matrix is telling you that something's wrong.
Right.
Or someone's trying to
Somebody
hack
changed
in.
something. Yeah.
Someone changed something. And just how that film altered the way we even think about movies. It's altered the way we even reference movies. Certainly science fiction. I mean, it took sci-fi into a whole new world. And it's not the same sense as it should be. I mean, the best films like Blade Runner, like Alien, like so many films, the genre is not the same since. And it's hard to make a film that is genre changing. Blade Runner did it. And really, Blade Runner is essentially changed filmmaking. I mean, there's even a little bit of Blade Runner in The Matrix, but really, like The Matrix takes off way past Blade Runner in a different way. But it's like this Bible that people open up saying, well, The Matrix did this, so we're going to have to do something else.
Yeah, and it's also kind of genre blending. It's not science fiction. It's not fantasy. It's not just a drama. It's a love
sort of
story.
cyberpunk, but it's not cyberpunk. Yeah.
It's those are my favorite films. The ones you cannot just pin them down and say, oh, it's just the action adventure. It's action, it's love, it's sci-fi, it's fantasy, it's cyberpunk. It's this beautiful mixture of everything.
And even in terms of the love story, obviously they're at the end, Trinity falls in love with Neo. But when you think of The Matrix, you don't think of their love story. You think of the actual story that's happening, that this man is being woken to the truth. Yeah. And to speak of that scene, there's the one scene towards the end where he's shot up with bullets and he's on the ground and they're like, get up. And then they're all in disbelief, like, how could this happen to the one?
Yeah.
How could the one be killed? And then all of a sudden,
boom,
Neo rises. And it's almost like, I don't know if you've seen David Lynch's original Dune, but there's this being called the Supreme Being, and his name is the Kwisatz Haderach. And there's this moment where he's awoken to this, I am the Kwisatz Haderach. I am the Supreme Being. I am the one. And Neo's awakening is very similar to that. And I could watch that scene over and over where he gets up and he's like, oh, it's just amazing. Just thinking about it, I get goosebumps.
You know what? That's really powerful because we all have those moments in our life where we're questioning who we are. And you struggle with that. What am I supposed to be with my life? What is my purpose? Who am I? Why am I here? And when you get to that point where you have those doubts or you die to yourself, there's a moment when you're reborn. And when that happens, that's when you realize you embrace the truth. You embrace the truth about who you are. And when that happens, your old self dies and the new self is born. And that's a really profound thing.
It is a profound thing. I think once maybe the process of that is very difficult, like Neo, he was killed, but it was a death to himself in some ways too. But with all of us in our personal life, when we get to this place where we're at the bottom emotionally or whatever was going on in life, all of a sudden the rise from that, the return from that is like
rebirth.
Oh boy.
Death.
Now I know. And that's something that speaks to all of us. Man, women, child, teenager, everyone, across every ethnic group, across every culture, across every continent. We all have that journey. We are all on the hero's journey in our own way. And The Matrix is probably one of the best versions of the hero's journey I've ever seen.
It is. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. The Matrix, 1999. One of Keanu Reeves. I think it's, if not his best film, I think that is his best performance.
It could be. Before we leave, though, we want to just briefly talk about the sequels and this upcoming fourth Matrix film.
Right.
What did you think about the sequel?
I love the sequels. I think story-wise, they were really excellent. I know there's a lot of things people don't like about it, but if you look at the first movie as a standalone thing and you think, how could this progress? I think they did a really excellent job progressing the story overall over all three films. So, the action was even better. In the first Matrix, there was only one, Neo was only fighting one person at a time. In the second film, all those Agent Smiths become a virus. That was a brilliant idea. They all just start piling on him, and the stakes get higher and things escalate. And the car chase scenes came in, and they did some really incredible action scenes. And so I thought they did a really good job. But for the fourth film, I have no idea what they're gonna do. I'm very curious to see what they're gonna do, and I'm excited. I'm looking forward to. Maybe I'll bring Onyx.
I really enjoyed the sequels as well. I know there are a lot. I know a lot of people who don't like the sequels at all, but I felt like The Matrix Reloaded asked better questions. It flipped everything we knew on its head, which I thought was brilliant. That's what you do. You ask questions, and then you ask bigger questions. And that's what The Matrix Reloaded did. It was asking bigger questions. And that's what I want, because the journey for me isn't about the answer, it's about the question. Even in the original film, Trinity comes up to Neo and she goes, it's not the answer, it's the question that drives you. That's why you're here. And Reloaded was that. It was one big question, but a myriad of questions. And I thought Revolutions was great. Now, I feel like the sequels weren't as tight as the first one, for sure. I think it had a lot to live up to. I don't think some of the effects, certainly in Reloaded, like you saw Digital Neo fighting all those Agent Smiths, it looked visibly a little ridiculous, and it was a little disappointing coming from the perfect effects of the first film to this sequel, Reloaded, where you have this Neo that doesn't look real, up in the air, doing all these flips and back things with Agent Smiths, which I thought the idea was great. I think visually it was fun to watch for sure, but it just didn't look real, and I felt like that hurt it a little bit. Aside from that, though, I felt like it was a good story. It was a good story, and it was Revolutions wrapped it up really well. But in terms of the sequel, The Matrix 4, which is shooting right now, I don't know. I think it's a trap. It can be a trap. If you're going to make a sequel, the story's going to need to be important. We know that Trinity died. We know that Neo sort of became one with the machines or whatever. He sacrificed himself. He did sort of the Jesus Christ thing, and we saw even the whole pose. And that was the end of his story. And there's been several ones. So why is Neo back? Why is this important? It has to be important. They cannot go back and we can't see things that we've seen before. The story has to be propelled forward. It has to be important that this character that we all love is back in our lives now. And if it's not, and if it's just a walk down the street of nostalgia, it's not going to be successful. It might have an interesting opening weekend in terms of numbers, because people are like, hey, it's Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss and they're back and we're all going to go see it. But the next weekend will be the litmus test to see how successful. So the story really has to be important. And we're seeing these days Star Wars sequels where you have old characters or new characters doing old things. There was nothing brought to the table with the Star Wars sequels that we hadn't already seen before. And so if they do this with The Matrix, they will not be successful. They have to do new things. They have to go new places. The script has to be well written and feel like we're learning something new about this world that we love so much. So that's my concern. It's a very big concern. I'm excited to see it. I am excited about it, but we've seen Star Wars, we've seen the Terminator films where, again, it's just old characters or new characters doing old things, or new characters, which are really old characters with new names, doing old things. And the system, the Hollywood system in place keeps doing that. I mean, the Marvel films are the same thing over and over and over and over and over, and they're going to get boring. I'm a little bit concerned for this Matrix sequel. I hope it's good. I really do. It's got to be good.
Yeah, I'm excited. I hope they do a good job.
Yeah, me too.
I'm looking forward to seeing.
We'll probably go see it together.
Yeah, and but I mean, you brought up a good point about the current stage of the Hollywood industry and the entertainment industry. They're just crazy about sequels and all these big CGI films, and they don't really focus on story like they used to. And everything has to be, I mean, even Spielberg talked about it. Everything has to be a big IP for them to want to invest in a movie these days. And for the new generation, you know, coming in, it's a little disheartening. So, I mean, I'm going elsewhere to find financing from like private investors and other sources of you know, income, rather than knocking on the studio's door, because it's just, the wall is so high and it's so thick, and there's just impossible to get into. So I feel like, you know, you're better off just making your own Hollywood, making your own films, doing your independent films the way you want to do them. You don't have some executives, you know, breathing down your neck the whole time, and you have a script that's written by 1 or 2 people rather than 4 or 5 or 6 people, and the vision is more clear, the characters are more pure, and they have a singular motivation.
Yeah, where I think why streaming is doing so well, because it's sort of the land of the auteur. It's the land of the director and the writer, where they, and the streaming services, the studio heads behind those services are like, we want original content, we want original stories, we want directors, people with passion and fervor to get their stories made. We're going to make them. They're raising up their hands because, you know, you have Apple, you have Facebook, you have all of these CBS and Hulu and all these outlets wanting to make content, and filmmakers are flocking to them because they're going to take a risk, and the Hollywood system is risk averse. That's plain and simple. I mean, we are seeing some bright spots here or there with films that are doing really well, like Jordan Peele's films, Us, and Get Out, and other films that are doing really, really well that are original. And so I think the tide is changing a little bit, but I think generally it's still this landscape where Disney and Marvel are dominating everything. And but, you know,
the same company now.
Yeah, and whether it's a Spider-Man film or whatever, Captain America, we're getting big, huge films with essentially the same story being retold over and over and over and over and over, culminating into, you know, which was the end of their run in terms of, I think, phase 1 of Marvel, which was Endgame, which I thought was actually pretty boring, to be honest with you. But that's a story for another time.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for watching. I know this was a little longer episode than normal, but if you're still here, we have a Patreon page now that we have started. If you guys would like to support the channel, there's a link down below in the description. And do you want to add anything? Yeah,
please subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're feeling interested in supporting us via Patreon, we have several tiers. We would love some support so we can take the time to do this more. So, you know, who knows, maybe we could do this as a full-time job at some point. That would be our dream, on top of the films that we're working on and the projects that we have in our head. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen, to watch, and we'll see you soon.
See you next time.